Pretty
Hey, brown anything is good, Miles.
All right, this is the welcome to the November meeting of the Devils Lake Water Improvement District Board. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Comments from citizens present on agenda or non-agenda items. Miles, why don't you turn that microphone towards you there so you can, there you go.
perfect. Beth Leonard's asked me to volunteer to be a coordinator for the Dragon Boat races, and he gave me two names that he and David Skirvin had met with, and I made an appointment on about 2 weeks ago when I went to Portland to learn about dragon boat races and met with this young fellow who's a college graduate and an IT salesman for an Apple store. And he's very impressive, and I think that he fits in with Paul's philosophy as far as a sustainable lake and a sustainable event. He wants everything from recycled to potable waste separated, and has dreams of it being an annual event, and he wants it in August. And I was very impressed with him, so I came back and stopped by the casino to see Heather Hatton to see what ideas she might have. And she wasn't available, but in talking to Linda Wagner, who is the receptionist, who I talk to every time I go in to see Heather, you've got to get by Linda to see Heather, and she suggested to me that I contact Shirley Hill of the Community Days celebration that's held in April, and I did that. And I think that's a great match for an annual boat race, dragon boat races, and I offered that event to him, but April is too soon for him to be organized with it, and it would probably the earliest date that he would be have the races organized would be in July for the revival, and then he still mentioned August, but understands that I told him that I didn't think the lake or the Lincoln City could use the influx of people, and we're trying to develop events that build business and identity to Lincoln City, and Community Days I thought would be a good event. He kind of liked that, but I didn't get a real sense of commitment other than he is continuing to put the committee together, to have various captains to be responsible for certain things, and then he'll present it, I assume, to the governing board of the Portland Dragon Boat Association. So I will be invited, I think, to go to their monthly meetings, he thought, and the first one would probably be in December. And I am willing to do that because my family lives in Portland, and I can go and bother them for a day or two and entertain myself that way. So if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to discuss what I know now about Dragon Boat.
Well, there's nothing wrong with community days, but I mean, do we really care when they come down as long as they do come down?
I think
put on an
we
event.
don't want to encourage any activity that we don't need, and August and the first half of September are the best weather and the best occupancy for the motels in town.
Bill, close to the mic.
The Dragon Boat races have about 20 people per team. There are 40 Dragon Boat teams in Portland. Their ages are 18 to 82, and there's a breast cancer survivors team. There are all kinds of ones. If each racer has a guest or two, there could be 400, 600 people here.
Gotcha. So some other time besides July and August.
Yeah, you know what?
And the first half of September, when the town's filled anyway.
Right. We were trying to target a time where, we didn't have the occupancy, and because it is such a large group, that occupancy could be, somewhat of an issue in the already busy area, timeframes.
No.
So that's why they were trying to get it to be outside of that really busy zone. So,
And I think the city council wants to encourage the VCB not to have events or not to sponsor any events that are going to be in August and September. They've even mentioned July, August, and till Labor Day, because they don't need the business then,
Right.
basically.
No, yeah, I guess that's obvious.
And so that was my thinking.
Another consideration, too, is, from 4th of July through Labor Day, that's the height of the business on the lake, from people from out of town. People have weekend homes, and people live here, and, it's extremely packed during those 8 weeks. And
Usually it is.
Usually,
The
yeah.
Water quality.
Yeah. So, that's another, you got to just pile more people and maybe block off part of the lake for that event, and, a small portion. So it would be a lot easier if you put it outside those 8 weeks.
I think so, too, and I think it'd be a great thing for community event or community days, because, and I didn't know there was a community days until I met Shirley, but that honors so many people that are in the community, and that would be a good kickoff for the Dragon Boats racing season, which is held in April, last part of March through October, same as the jet ski races are, and that it would be a good draw for the first weekend of Community Days, when the Rose Festival person is down here, and that's coordinated, so maybe we could get some extra publicity for Dragon Boats in Lincoln City and the Rose Festival Princess, or
it's Miss Oregon, by the way. It's Miss Oregon. It's not
Miss
Rose.
Oregon, yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It would be a great time if you could be ready to do that in April, and if even if it doesn't come together for later in the summer, and we could do something in conjunction with Revival on a smaller scale for just kind of an exhibition instead of the full races, and do the full races in 2015.
And that's what I thought, too, if he...
Because if we don't do something, that might be a nice place, filler to do an exhibition, let some community paddlers do some, or something like that, and maybe not do water polo or whatever.
I think he talked about in the email sent afterwards, after I'd invited him to Community Days, that they'd only bring down maybe 6 boats for the Revival, or something, some smaller number of racing boats.
Well, thank you, Miles. Just, so you'll keep on it, because this sounds like pretty exciting possibility for the
approval.
lake and the town.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to ask one question, and maybe you'll decide it tonight or talk about it. What planning is going into the Devil's Lake Revival this year because Paul doesn't have Seth, and Seth was a big part of it, I think, originally. It's all going to be dumped on Paul, or we're going to get volunteers from the lake community to...
Are you volunteering?
No, I mean, got one volunteering.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do. But before we ask boat race, dragon boat races to come for the revival, I'd like to know, just as a citizen, that there will be a revival in 2014.
I think it is on the agenda, and I hope it, I'm planning on supporting it for next year, personally. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm assuming that it's going to be an annual event. You're right, we don't have Seth right now, and frankly, I think we haven't given a lot of thought for next year at this point, but I think the assumption is it's going to be an annual event.
I think it's a good event to have.
And we've sort of already invented the wheel, you know. We have the procedures, and we know who to contact and when, and get them here. So a lot of the groundwork has been done by Seth. So if we haven't hired someone in his stead, I'm sure Paul can handle it.
I'll take care of that.
Are you going to stick around so we can talk after? Or?
I'll stay around tonight, or I'll be happy to meet with you tomorrow if you want to.
Let's connect for tomorrow. You're tired tonight. Or, yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Miles.
Thanks.
All right, unfinished business, Devil's Lake Plan, septic and sewer.
So we kind of formally connected these two items on this agenda. It's always been septic and sewer separately, but they've kind of merged into one, rightfully so, I think. Seth did a nice summary document of the project to date, which you all and myself can reflect on. I think it's a useful tool, and that comes up again on the other projects he has been leading too. So we have that, and I think Brian or David, you alluded to that as far as the Devil's Lake Revival, the same kind of template is there. As for activities that actually happened today, Brian and I met with the County Council, Wayne Belmont, and the City Attorney, Richard Apichello, this afternoon at our office regarding basically the idea of another potential means to do a sewer district, if you will. It's sanitary authorities as prescribed in the ordinance 450-705. It's really not really much different than any of the other kind of discussions we've had, really, relative to a septic or a sewer district. It just says that there's a provision in the code or in ORS for the county to initiate such a authority, but it really doesn't get done unless the people elect it to happen. So it's not really much different than anything else that we've looked at. It does have the same kind of opportunities and constraints as a septic sewer district does, but basically it would be another board, another level of government that would administer this sanitary authority. We actually spent the bulk of the time talking about just kind of more kind of overarching concerns. The question about how you finance something, it started out, they were talking about the potential lot method of assessing parcels, because if you have a line that goes by 10 acres, a lot, somebody owns 10 acres, do they pay for one sewer system, and that's what they can get right now? Or is it more sensible to charge them for basically the potential of how many homes that they could build on a 10-acre lot if it were to become, say, annexed or had a different level of inside the city, it could have different rules associated with that parcel. If it stays in the county, it would be one parcel. So those things kind of created the discussion, which actually then the main discussion which we had was things that the district has brought to concern as well, and identified in our Devil's Lake plan, and that's the issue of sewer. Okay, we understand the positive attributes of sewer, but we've also spoken and adopted our plan to address the issues of development relative to sewer, extending sewer to new areas that are currently not favorable to development, but then would become. And so, as we know, runoff and stormwater and all the other attributes associated with the development can have a major impact on a water body and a watershed. And so, I think it was wise that this body adopted that Devil's Lake plan, which addresses that concern, and that sewer should be proceeded, but also should be come forth, but also be preceded by, or at least accompaniment with, and I've always addressed it as like a planning layer, some sort of planning layer. Well, the wiser people in the meeting today provided me some education, which is fantastic. And one thing that the city and the county have always maybe had on their back burner, but maybe that's something that should have been addressed. It certainly would have been advantageous if it had been addressed before the Rhodes End issue came about, and so there's definite precedent for them to work on such thing. And that is an urban growth management agreement. And so, and this is my first go at understanding this, but basically it would be agreement between the city and the county addressing how development would proceed if parcels came into the city's, became part of the city. And what the urban growth management agreement would do would set up a means for the city, the county, and the developer to work together with multiple tools of incentive and for, say, development, and also protectionism for, say, conservation. So it's instead of a planning layer, which is what I've always associated with, like, okay, this is what you can do or you can't do in this area. The urban growth management agreement, if you develop it right, would allow, would establish parameters which the city and the county could then use as in agreements with developers. And that in itself could be the tool that would provide that quote-unquote planning layer that would help protect Devil's Lake. And when I talk about a planning layer, I'm always thinking setbacks from the lake's edge. I think that's should be our number one objective in those types of pursuits.
But let me just interject. It's important to realize that the idea is not to impose requirements and restrictions on private property owners, but to set up a negotiation process between city and county and a landowner for maybe the landowner to give up some kind of development ability on his property close to the lake in exchange for the rights to develop some other property that's not environmentally as sensitive. But the landowner has to voluntarily agree to this. He has to see benefit outweighing detriment to him, and there's nothing imposed by government as part of this process. It's all strictly voluntary from three sides.
So basically it gives the city a voice in county when they're doing a conditional use permit or whatever development's going on. The city can say, hey, we'd really like to see this just in case at some point.
Well, it's more actually close, I think. And again, this is kind of my first understanding of it too. So if a developer came to the city and said, hey, I would like to be in your city because I could get 40 houses built on this 10 acres or something, where right now I can get one house because they're in the county. So the developer's coming to the city and saying, basically, annex me. And what this an urban growth management agreement would allow basically some of the tools or the parameters that would make sense to, something that you might want to have in a planning layer to begin with, that was a natural resource planning layer, if that's your objective, the natural resource planning layer. Some of those objectives as negotiating tools and opportunities, and what Brian was alluding to was maybe some transfer, some rights to some land that the city has available, say at Villages Cascade Head or something, some other less environmentally sensitive areas that, and so it's really just setting up that tool such that when that developer does show up and say, I just bought that, those 100 acres on the east side of East Hills Lake Road, up the hill, and I can build a house now, but I'd like to, do some more, and that's the kind of framework that it establishes, a way for the city and the county to then have that discussion with that developer. So that actually took up, a considerable amount of our meeting. We talked about other tools that the city actually is working on relative to opportunities for financing. There's been some voice on the east side and or just in general from folks that maybe there's an entity that, using this developer analogy again, maybe there's a developer on the east side that wants to basically develop their property, but they need sewer to do that. Well, one of the tools that the city, I believe, is developing is this advanced finance district, which allows a private entity the capacity to, say, build a road and a sewer and across the frontage of other people's properties that aren't developed at this time, but once they do, then they would reimburse that developer. So it's just kind of like a private financing tool that allows that private financier to be reimbursed. So that in itself could be a tool for sewer.
And the city has already adopted that.
Did they finish adopting that one? Okay. So that's a tool. We also spoke about whether or not the city could do an LID outside of the city's boundaries. That's going to be further investigated. There may be a potential for that. I can't speak yay or nay on that any further than that. But the other two steps that the city and the county agreed to do is to work with their planning departments and look at really what's a development. What's the development potential of basically the east side and Yatsu, and for the county, and then within the city limits for our city planner. And to look at, and that kind of gets at that thing I mentioned earlier. It's like, okay, so do you charge somebody that's got a 10-acre parcel one sewer tap worth, or do you charge them the value of the 40 sewer taps that they could eventually have on that parcel? And so, that's an important discussion to have, at least. Closer to sewer, are we? I wouldn't say that one meeting got us any closer, but it is addressing potentially some concerns that I've had, and the district has held that if you create a sewer and you open up opportunity for development willy-nilly, effectively on the east side, which is where most of the development would be still available, does a sewer permanently ruin Devil's Lake, or does it help fix it? And the question is how do you address the development? And that's a major concern, and it's a valid one to pursue. And so having the city and county have an urban growth management agreement would be part of that tool. And so that I think was the biggest plus to come out of today's meeting. That's
I
what
think
I'll
the
report.
first thing that's going to occur following this meeting is that the city and county attorneys are going to ask their respective planning departments to identify which properties are, what the proportion is between properties already developed and properties that are available for development, and which ones, and I asked them to differentiate between properties that are undeveloped now that could still be developed with septic versus properties that could only be developed if there was a sewer system installed for that property, so that we could see really how much increased development would be caused by sewer. My point being that even if it doesn't happen quite as fast, basically all the property around the lake, even if it's not lakefront, is still desirable. It's going to get developed if it can be developed, whether it's served by septic or sewer. And so it's important to differentiate between those that can be developed with either septic or sewer and those that can only be developed by sewer. So we know what the real impact, the additional increment, and the additional burden will be on the watershed as a result of sewer. The development causes, extra impermeable surfaces, extra runoff, all those things. And so, I told them that I do think that they're going to find that the benefit of sewer far outweighs the damage to the watershed that could be caused by the relatively small increment of properties that can only be developed if sewer comes around. But it's a good first step. I mean, that assumption, it's very possible that it's wrong, and we should know before we. And it's something that's pretty easy for them to determine too. I mean, we're talking about 2,000-foot overlays that you can see, and they'll make their calculations pretty quickly. So
That's about it.
Okay.
We talk about.
I would
And,
like to know more about the agreement between for the urban growth agreement stuff. So if you have some of that you can send over or point me to that I can read up on it, that would be great.
what we're going to get, Richard promised, City Attorney Richard Apicello promised us a summary of what transpired at the meeting, so we'll get that to everybody. Maybe ask him, I guess, if it's okay to put it online.
Yeah, we can definitely give you a copy of it.
Yeah, so you can maybe better understand what happened at the meeting today. But the good news is that the city and the county are still very interested in investigating this further, and unless it looks like it would actually be detrimental to the lake, we're going to keep going forward. I want to also report that I have nothing to report about the LID sewering, and I haven't heard anything from the city, and I think they're just kind of in this long initial phase of everybody giving everybody time to identify where they want their hookup to be, that's going to impact their property. And I think things will start to move much more quickly, hopefully after the first of the year. So that's that. Save our shoreline, Paul, I guess.
Yeah, so one of the other tasks I asked Seth to do before he left was to make a summary of that program to date, which he's done. And part of that, it includes, just the files he has associated with each of the parcels, et cetera, and the GIS layer that was developed for those projects. Reviewing the minutes, I was reminded that one of his outgoing recommendations was that we look at some ongoing maintenance of that rain garden at Regatta Grounds. I think he suggested maybe a $50 a month agreement to extend that to the person that we were working with already. So I bring that back up to your attention tonight, knowing that I didn't, provide that in the staff report, but he had done that previously, and he talked about it, but there was no action. So I kind of wanted to see where your, what your feelings were on that. He was thinking that if you had some low level of maintenance, that you might, absolve yourself of having high level of maintenance in the nearer future. Regatta Grounds being the parcel that is not, going away from our control.
So remind me what we did. We agreed to do some maintenance. Was that just through October?
Yeah, I think, that's expired. Yeah, we had like $100 a month. And it may have actually been through September, frankly. I'd have to look back as to when the last date. I can't recall, actually, if there was a bill in there to this month or not, which would kind of indicate whether or not because I don't think there was anything done in October.
How necessary is it in the winter?
Well, certainly not as much. And one of the things that I was thinking, because I haven't assessed it myself directly, is that if you were to want to just authorize me to make some sort of judgment call on your behalf as to whether or not I felt that it was worth the $50 this month or something, or something on that order, just to get something going, and then you're not held a month back or what have you. Certainly a lot less, like the weeds aren't growing. But if it's one thing that we're blessed with on the Oregon coast is a 45-degree kind of winter, and stuff grows year round. Average temperature. So
I'm gonna drive through there. It's dark, so
anyway,
so it's always dark when I'm driving through
Okay.
there. So I don't tell you what it looks like right now.
anybody else want to provide comment on what it is? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you make an assessment and bring a recommendation next month to the board?
Yeah.
I'm waiting a month's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Vegetation management.
All right. So after our big meeting at ODF&W, we've created some draft responses to the commission on some of their pertinent questions. I've read that. Brian's read that. Both made comments. Been working on getting some of our vegetation management strategies out there too, that we're going to submit back to them, so they have that. Got the audio from the meeting, which was informative. I've had a chance to listen to it. Actually made a small emailable copy if other people are interested in listening to that.
Are you going to post that on our website, or have you already?
I haven't, but I could do it.
If you would, that would be,
Sure.
I'll just pull it off of there.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. So my goal is to get this response to ODF&W by the Thanksgiving holiday, before Thanksgiving. I think that's a good goal, and I think we're pretty close. I just want to make sure that we've covered everything. That, and then.
Are you waiting to do that to review the tape of the?
Well, actually, it's mostly just compiling the other strategies and having that ready to go in association with that. There wasn't too much else within the audio that I heard that felt like really needed to be pointed out. I think we, in our mental notes and such, I think we pretty much covered the main things. I'm going to take another listen to that, though, too, again, and see if that holds true. But, yeah, I believe that, I think that's a good, I think it's a reasonable time frame to get that back to them. The long-term strategy would be to work with their staff to see if there's a solution that can be found, and that was kind of what the chair of the commission kind of instructed their staff to do, and to work with us. And so obviously our goal is to work into the direction of getting approval for the grass carp. And so thank them for that opportunity, I guess. But
And then as part of this letter, we also actually proposed a draft amendment to the regulations that presently prohibit us from putting carp in the lake. And so just to hopefully help the commission and the staff start thinking along the lines of, what will work in terms of allowing carp in a body of water will protect the native species, but yet give a responsible entity that has the monitoring capability the right to use them if they are the most practicable alternative for controlling vegetation growth, unwanted vegetation growth.
And thank you for drafting those up, and I think that will, it'll really spur that discussion on. Like here's a potential way to do that, and so that's been a big plus. That'll be a big plus, I think, too.
Further discussion about that vegetation management?
Nope.
Communications report.
Okay, so I'm going to be on the radio on this Tuesday. Third Tuesday. I don't know what that is. I have to look at the calendar. KBCH, live on the internet, live on Channel 4, Facebook, Twitter. The main one here is the Devils Lake Revival, which I added. I'm working under the assumption, I had been at least, that you're going to all want to have a Devils Lake Revival, and I guess that's the big question. I heard today at the onset that David obviously was in support of, would be voting, but I would like to find out, formally from you all, do you plan on dedicating, time, resources of the district to the Devils Lake Revival so that we can start planning for it?
I can make a motion for that if you like. But
What's that?
so I'm happy to make a motion in that direction, yeah.
Okay, make your motion.
I make a motion that we plan to have the Devils Lake Revival as an annual event ongoing until further decisions change.
Further discussion?
Well, okay, practically speaking, how do you do that? Seth was basically in charge of it. Is there going to be a new Seth, or what?
Yeah, that would be one of the options. You could farm it out to an entity that specializes in things like this. We looked at some of those prices relative to the RARE program. When we started evaluating the RARE program, we started bringing in some of those costs associated with what a private entity would charge you to organize an event on your behalf, effectively. That would be one other option. You mentioned the option of just hiring somebody. Then there's just using myself to do it, and it just becomes that's. I think he figured it's about 6 weeks of solid time stretched over 3 months, I think is what he suggested. You just have to be aware of that. It might be something that, when Seth came on, he came on for a year through that RARE program. The Devils Lake Revival happened that next year, not because that was part of the plan, but that's became part of the plan, as I recall. If you were to create a similar position and had them say start in April, then that might be a really appropriate window to get an event planned by July, of which then that person could also be basically your intern, your water quality intern for that summer. So that's kind of one of the ideas that's kicking around in my head. is certainly, and Seth and I talked about this before too, I think it's advantageous that if you're going to have, basically a second full-time staff person, that second full-time staff person at least be a water quality, have the capacity to do the water quality as well, so that they're trained on, so they can, help with that, say, in the first year, and then, as was the case in subsequent years with Seth, he only just filled in when at times need be. He was not the primary. You had your internship running concurrently with his work. So that would be something that I think might make sense, is to look at a staffing position, say April-ish, or just go to the straight internship for the water quality, and leave it up to me to plan it. Or, like I said, the other option would be to farm it out.
Oh, my concern is that I thought Seth was doing a great share of the work. And,
absolutely.
He's not here anymore, so if we don't have anybody in his place, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, that's the difficulty.
Yep.
I certainly, at that time of year, am not going to be doing anything other than volunteering my kayaks.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, you're busy. It's your peak season. Like I said, it was probably, he estimated 6 weeks after having refined his skill at doing it for the third year. You throw somebody in new, I'm fairly new to the whole idea of doing that event, not as new as somebody else that would just be hired. There'd be a bit of a learning curve for anybody. I would say easily 90% of that organization time was under his leadership and work, not even just leadership, his actual workload, so, of those 6 weeks.
Did we get any estimates of the cost of, I think you alluded to the fact we did, of outsourcing this to planning for this one event?
We have some information relative to that. I don't have it here with me tonight, but we've priced stuff out before, kind of, in a kind of just regular event marketing kind of world, and it's not cheap. I recall that, and I know that was one of the things. Is like, if you wanted to do that. It was like, well, you could almost, there was discussion relative to the RARE program, having a new RARE position, and that was starting to come, okay, well, you could do that, or you could just do it privately, and I know that was, a considerable cost. There was also a ton of other things in that thing, too, like the web development and all the other stuff that you were kind of evaluating and things that, may make sense to be privately done, versus have someone come fresh and learn how to do it. But it's, if I think Seth and I estimated that it's probably, in-house, I think you're looking at about a $10,000 expenditure with the cost of the event, which was, I think you spent about $3,500 in cash and staff time. I think it was about $10,000. So if you farmed it out and you could get it done for 12, maybe that's cheaper than having a full-time position opened up that you don't necessarily want to have in September or in October or November. So those might be thoughts to have, because having full-time staff is something unto itself.
Is this anything that the VCB would entertain?
They would not, in my understanding and discussions with the director, because of, well, for a couple of reasons. They're getting away from events entirely, but also this is a summertime event, and that gets at what right. Miles was dealing with. The VCB is actually obligated to be supporting stuff outside of that summer period, and then also events is something they're not going to be doing.
Well, that's another question. It's been in August, but why does it have to be in August? Why does it have to be in the...
A lot of it was just availability of regatta grounds.
Really?
Yeah, when we could get it for penciling in on the, what weekends were available.
Huh.
Well, it was in August 2 years. It was like the 28th of August, and it was like the 4th of August, and last year was in July, actually.
Right.
But, if we were to move it to really to the off-season, I think it's really just a weather issue is the main reason that we haven't, even June can be, pretty rainy and, but, with the water quality issues that, you face typically any August, any July, that's always been a concern too, particularly the first year that we held it way late in the season. It was like the 20-something of August. And I think what we had is we had a bloom early and then it went away in time for the revival. Yeah. The second year we had a bloom start like the day before the revival, and then this year we had a bloom that started just about the time of the revival. So it's those are fickle things, and unless you really go to the cooler water temperature time, to the early, say April, May, but then it's weather. It's like, do you want to have a big outdoor event in the rain?
Do we know what days are available in July for next year?
We don't. My intent was to vet out basically, would you have it in at all? And because my assumption was that you would have it and that it would be likely in July, when they asked, the VCB actually asked us if we were going to have it, and could we give them a date so they could put it on their calendar, start promoting it. I couldn't give them that, but I suggested that it would be in July.
On this and another subject, we're going to have the races again, correct?
The ski races?
I think so, but I have spoken to down.
Okay.
And
The reason I ask is I have no idea whether it would be a good idea or not, but to combine the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wasn't at that event. That was the Devil's Lake Dash, the inaugural Devil's Lake Dash, which was like May 17th and 18th last year, or this year.
If you do combine the two, then you have to eliminate the in-water activities for the kids, because they're racing around that entire area.
That's true, yeah.
It becomes more of a community-sponsored spectator of event than a community involvement and participation. So that would be my only concern with that.
That's true. That would work. Okay. Well, getting back to your original question, I personally would like to see it continue. I don't know if that's practically possible, but I would like to see it.
I think we all want it to continue. When do we need to make a decision about how we're going to continue it?
I would think at least by April.
I think sooner than that.
Yeah.
February?
Yeah, certainly earlier the better. I don't think we're ready to make that decision tonight, and January, February could be an opportunity.
Well, I guess I look at it and I think tonight we can make a decision that we're going to support doing it.
That's what I'm thinking.
We can get the dates and select whatever dates you think are the best, and then after that we can come with some proposals on how we want to staff, organizing the event over the next quarter, the first part of the year.
Yeah, so the target would be to make the decision at the February meeting, so that, that's what I'd like to see, the target, so that we can, give, however we're going to do it, have plenty of time to happen. April sounds a little tight to me.
It is a little tight, and actually just thinking back, when we've talked about the internship, typically we start talking about the internship around February, and then maybe we get something out in the paper for for March, or and really start interviewing maybe April or what have you, and that in itself has been late. I think that experience has shown that we should back that up and have it available, frankly, for kids on December break. That's when a lot of those talented folks are looking for their summer internship, because they know that they got to stay busy and got to get stuff together, and we think spring break. Well, that is a one to us when we've kind of brought it out, is after that the winter term. But if we had it really started, saying, hey, we need to have something available for those kids to look at in basically December. The reason I bring that up is because that kind of gets at kind of one of those other methods of staffing it, is like, do you have somebody like a project manager like Seth do that and then do the summer internship?
I would say in regards to that, you're the only one that's held that back. Because if you bring it to us in December, we'll work on it in December.
Well, I did say we.
You bring those to, we make the decision, generally that meeting.
I wasn't suggesting it was
you.
you.
Do the internship, so if you want to do it in December, then bring it forward.
Yeah. Well, and so that's kind of one of the kind of overlaying things to this project manager position that we were talking about earlier too. So we could look at trying to make that decision next month collectively to say on both sides. Are you going to look at staffing something, or are you going to look at farming it out, or are you going to look at just having me do it? Those being the three ones to consider, and there'll be some level of cost analysis for you to consider, but I think it's kind of be more of a policy decision. It's going to be like, what do you feel is the best way forward, not really what's the only and most cost-effective way forward. Because it is kind of more policy side.
Paul, did Seth leave you any type of documentation on what he did to
Absolutely.
make that event happen?
Yep.
So you're not going to have to rediscover the wheel there. You're going to have a step-by-step process that basically anyone that's connected with the community can follow and maybe add some improvements.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That was one of the tasks that we had him complete, and he did so.
All right, so it sounds like hiring a replacement for Seth / internship / revival kind of all go hand in hand, and we should let's talk about it next meeting.
I think we should, yeah, and whether or not that means, if you decide that, you're just going to have an internship and maybe farm it out for the summer for a project, you don't have to figure out who you farm it out to or whatever. That can be held off till, February for sure, but then at least you get your internship sorted.
I, for one, will not be here next meeting. I'll be out of the state.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So, we have a motion on the table still, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The always exciting topic of the fast-moving Mid-Coast TMDL.
Quick safety report there, too. Nothing there to report. So that was even faster and more scintillating. But, yeah, the TMDL, the same thing as was reported last meeting. Need to do those low duration curve analyses for our contribution to the TMDL, and that's to be done by their December meeting, and that's basically the update.
Okay. East Devils Lake Road says no update, so I assume there's no update.
Yeah, you had that letter from Salmon Drift last month in there about what they're working on and have worked on, and so one thing that we maybe do need to keep an eye on and maybe have a provision for is you provided $10,000 of fish money, I don't know what the term would be.
Relief money.
Yeah, fish relief money, yeah. And so, how we deal with that potential, because that's actually still certainly a possibility, even with the elevated road, that fish could be getting stranded out there, come high water. So,
Is that 10 or is that 5?
10, I thought. I'm pretty sure it's 10.
So did you
Check
have any
that,
plans on how you needed to apply that, or how we would apply that?
I'm sorry?
I said, have you made any plans on how we could or would or should?
it's been our intent, I think, to work with the Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council in that, and I can just administer that if that's probably the easiest thing, to suggest that we create basically some level of staffing dollars to either through directly to them. I think that was the goal, is to provide them the funds, and then they can staff it and that sort of thing. That was the more simple, I think, way of managing it, and so we can assure that happens if
So, I mean, the idea would be, wouldn't it, that you would administer that on an as-needed sort of basis?
Yes.
So, okay, so that's where we're at, and that's what you're doing, right?
That's where we're at, and that's what I will continue to do, and if that's if consensus so suggests.
Well, we have to authorize him to do it. But,
yeah.
Do you expect officials start running here in the next 3 weeks?
They've ran in over Thanksgiving in previous years.
Yeah.
So it's potential. I've been out there on Thanksgiving Day, or at least the Friday after myself.
All right, so do we have a motion to, whether this is necessary or not, do we have a motion to authorize Paul to administer the previously authorized, what is it? How much was it?
My understanding was $10,000 was what you budgeted for. We can check I probably do have a copy.
$5.
Oh.
I was thinking
the
$5.
budget.
The $5 for the grant writing part of it, donation to it?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so then it was the 10 for the
Yeah.
ongoing. Okay, that's right.
Does that sound familiar? Yeah.
All right, we'll let the past minutes speak for themselves. Whatever the exact amount is, I'll move that we authorize Paul to administer that amount on an as-needed basis.
I'll second.
Okay.
Further discussion?
So the only my point of contention on this is that I don't like the idea, because I don't like not having any structure or idea on what administer this means, right? Where it's going, what the things could or could not be used for in terms of funding, in terms of the activity. I mean, I understand the general concept and what we want to do, and I agree with that, but I don't like the idea of, here's your slush fund, spend it as you see fit, in terms of this quantity of money, in the time frame that we're talking about. We should have had a plan in place knowing that these fish run at this time of the year, and knowing that here's the things that we can do to support that and reinforce that and make it better. And I don't like the idea of just having an open checkbook on that.
Yeah, I think, generally that's a good approach, but here, I mean, the Salmon Drift Creek Water Council's driving the bus, and I think he has to have the flexibility to respond to what they say their needs are, and to make decisions with it, when they request funds, to make decisions of whether A, you want to give them as much as they're asking for, or B, less, or not at all. And that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with supporting the activity. I really am. I'm disappointed that we haven't thought about this, knowing that this is an annual run and this is when it happens, and we didn't get anything.
Yeah, and I actually will take some of the blame for that.
Yeah.
Some of the complacency on my part actually comes from the fact that the road got paved.
Yeah.
The urgency kind of fell away, and
we might not
and
have
you're
any
right.
water over the road this year.
That's true, right.
Yeah. So
We've got water over the road already.
We have had, and maybe again recently. I noticed I don't get around there every day, but it does flood.
well, I'm
It's
leaving
absolutely-
stranded, but I don't. Yeah.
And I've thought about it, and I'm happy.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just,
What possible expenditures could you make?
The primary would be, personnel, staffing, basically, people to basically be flaggers and rescuers of those fish during those flooding, the time that the fish are running. It's been kind of ad hoc, like, you kind of group, get people there if they can get some volunteers to do it, but this would provide some actual funded time to basically make people show up, you know what I mean? To actually have it, as much as, people may want to volunteer their time, they can't always.
Is any other entity like Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council or anybody else contributing any actual dollars to that?
No, not that I know of, yeah. Not that I...
Do they have any money to contribute?
No.
Yeah. Well, I guess the problem is I don't know how to make it any more specific than when we know what the intent is, we know what the purpose is. If anybody has an idea about how to make his authority more specific, then feel free to speak up.
I think it's clear cut. Personally.
Well, what can you foresee as far as expending the money? What can you foresee as hiring? Putting out a job description for people temporary labor for whenever it rains really hard and the water goes over and the salmon are running. I don't know. You put the job out there, well, then the money's going to get used up. Whether or not
yeah, I mean, see, we might not have to use it, if we get lucky.
Anyway.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I want to say the fish, but I really want it. I was really hoping we'd have
Something a little more...
structure around what we're doing.
Yeah, like I said, I do apologize for that, because you're right.
The money could have gone towards, dredging out that culvert, so we had lots of,
Explain the dredge part.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
It's not about not helping the fish. It's about not having a plan. That's the only. I'm glad we're supporting the fish.
All right, the motion carries. Policy updates. Let me save you some trouble here. There really are no updates, and we understand that you're trying to have this done in January of 2014.
Yep.
Okay. Enough said. Water quality monitoring, harmful algae bloom surveillance.
Okay, so I think I got the dates in here. Yes, November 7th, sampled the lake, did a full scan of the lake as well, and really it felt like this was the time that we could actually get a sample, get it to the external lab, and likely have success in getting it delisted. Got the preliminary results back. So far, so good. They have provided results for 3 of the 4 toxins, all of which were below the detection limits of the machine, which means that they were significantly below the state standards for listing. Still pending a 4th toxin and the cell count analysis of basically how many organisms are in there. Both of which my hope and estimation and best guess is that they will also be well below the thresholds. I've notified the state of this as I have you and everyone else that's on our listserv. So as we've provided information, as we've had it, we've done so. And so that's been sent out. And I did heard back from the state on that, and they're as soon as they get the list, the go ahead on the rest of the information, then they would list their advisory. And that is, I believe, the extent of the reportable information. questions?
Anybody have any comment? All right. Office and lab space.
Okay, so last meeting, we had a pretty extensive presentation on opportunities to move to the Oregon Coast Community College, making use of renting basically two office spaces and having access to the lab and the video conferencing room and the other amenities there at the community college. You had two questions that you wanted resolved relative to what was known at the time. One of which was, could we potentially adjoin those two offices physically, create a door or some sort of passage. The district, can't get it out, the school, community college, is amenable to that after 6 months of a lease. Basically, say if we were to sign a lease in January, come the end of June, they'd say, okay, they'll get us a price as to what it would cost, and if we wanted to move forward, they would put it in for us at our cost. Basically, joining those two rooms. The other question that you had was about signage, and they are amenable to providing space for some signage out on the street there on High School Drive. Similar to what the Master Gardeners have on High School Drive associated with the college space that they utilize, and provided the city allows that. I've spoken with the city on this, and they were going to get back to me more formally because they wanted to run it all the way up the chain of command on this, but the ordinance does say that you can have directional signage, which this is what it would be directing people to Devils Lake Water Improvement District in a residential area, which is where the college is. That sign can be no more than 2.5 feet tall, which is, again, on par with what the Master Gardener sign is like at that parcel, and no more than 6 square feet. So basically, you're talking about a 2-by-3 foot sign that's a 1/2 foot off the ground and points to go take a left or a right, basically, depending on which way you're coming. So that's what I envision. So barring some change from what the city has in their allowable sign ordinance, that would be something we could install. And then the other part of it would be the community colleges creating indoor signage. So once you get in the facility, pointing to the different areas where people would be interested in going, particularly the Small Business Development Administration office there, and then also Devils Lake Water Improvement District obviously would be on that sign. And so that would help resolve some of that. Where do I go from here? Once you're inside the door. So those are the two items that were of question at the time. Having visited the site again and identifying our needs, it's clear to me that our fridge freezer will be a very hard thing to find space for, based on the fact that the lab, all that secure space, all of the wall space is got cabinets on it. There's no spot to push a refrigerator up against. It's just like we looked at some other options. There might be an option to even temporarily put it in a closet or something downstairs. Actually walked through the whole thing with the president of the college and Dave Price, and we were all three of us kind of earnestly looking for a spot. It's not a lot of good options. But we found potentially what would be, in my estimation, a short-term solution. We need a fridge freezer available for our work, certainly, and it really needs to be in the lab. And so what I would suggest and that we consider in a future meeting would be, if we were to move to the college, that we basically replace our current fridge freezer with two individual countertop models. And this is kind of what President Koike was mentioning. You could do a countertop model in their facility, but, there's just not a footprint for doing the stand-up. This wouldn't be a bad thing. The stuff that we've got right now, I was pointing out to Brian today when we were having our meeting, after our meeting, it's a domestic refrigerator. It doesn't really serve the purposes that we need it for. It's really inadequate. Would be most preferable to replace those anyhow. I did some original kind of pricing. It looked like you could get a unit, a freezer for about $600 and a fridge for about $600. So you'd be potentially spending another $1,200 to kind of fit yourself out with this lab change, if it were to so be. So I would put it forward to probably expect those types of expenditures potentially. Within a month or so of, even making it available for delivery for January. That was the other thing. That's why, first off, decide if you want to go there, and then we'll decide if there's a need to supplement that part of the lab. Those are the three things, that the refrigerator being the new one that I've addressed in this report. And besides that, all the other issues and concerns in the redrafted memorandum of understanding, I believe, suits the district's needs and requirements for the sampling and the monitoring program. We added some days to the time frame when we'd be eligible to be in the lab. They're amenable to those changes. Actually have received signed copies from the community college interim president, if you so chose to move forward tonight.
What's the term of the lease again?
1 year. Actually, and that actually, I apologize. I did. That was my oversight to not mention that. We originally, the draft that David put together was 6 months, and in the redraft we put it at 1 year.
Well, then what about the 6 months before you can get the opening between the offices? Why is that?
It's just to ensure that they're not breaking out the Sawzall over Christmas break and have
You're there for a year anyway, so.
Well, I mean, you could
put it in 6
you could
months
you could break a lease, I guess. I mean, I guess their interest was that we make sure that it works for everyone. That we're not only are we penning that we're staying, but that we are actually staying because you can break leases, I guess. But the reason I think was just that they wanted to make sure that before they broke out the Sawzall, that effectively that it was going to work.
I think if they rethought that, they might change their mind.
They might.
Noel's right. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mechanical work.
Yeah.
Until summer.
Yeah, they might. We.
I got a Sawzall.
That was the they obviously ran it up their chain of command, and that's where it came back.
Well, I just wondered if they came up with that condition before you decided it would be a 1 year versus a 6 month lease.
Originally, and still, it was basically after 6 months. It would be the time to decide if cutting a hole made sense. So that really didn't change. They didn't. Nothing changed on that.
But yeah,
I think that 1 year just became more of a rational of having a year lease.
If you're doing it a 6 month lease, then that criteria makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing a year's lease, it makes absolutely not
difference.
one atom of sense. So, I mean, it's no big deal to you, but
If we were to agree to do this, would you be okay with waiting until June?
I would, absolutely, yeah. And the other thing is like, you don't have anybody in that other office anyhow.
Oh, that's true.
You know.
That's where the freezer could go then.
Yeah. I mean, we still have access to that room. In fact, I mean, we could put the fridge freezer in. In fact, that was one of the thoughts, is you could just stuff it in there for now. And we're not actively doing a monitoring program, so it's not really a big hassle because you don't have to run up and down the stairs to get a bag of ice.
The only thing you really use it for is the monitoring program and storing the test kits and stuff like that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, again?
I said all you're really using it for is the monitoring program and your lunch, the refrigerator.
Not using it for my lunch. Let's be clear on that. Yes, yeah, it's dedicated for the lab. Yeah.
Is that commercial equipment you're buying for $600 for?
It's laboratory. Yeah, not high-end laboratory stuff. I mean, it's bottom of the barrel laboratory stuff. You can, it's like it would provide temperature, say for the freezer. The big issue with the one that we have right now is it's a frost-free refrigerator, and that means that it thaws every day. It's something, goes up to basically 0 degrees centigrade, 32 Fahrenheit, and thaws. And that's how you maintain a frost-free environment in there. That's not good for biological samples. And so when we stored our DNA samples before we sent them out, those are sitting in there and potentially going to basically almost melting, right, and then freezing again. And that basically destroys the cells is what it does. It's like you never take meat out of the freezer and then refreeze it. You got to use it up. It's a similar thing. And so a frost-free refrigerator is kind of doing that. The lab grade would actually be not frost-free and also cooler. And the big attribute for that is, and it seems silly, but like when you have a frost-free refrigerator and it only chills it down to say, going to stay in the metric, like -8 or so. You open those doors, it's basically 0 at the most, because the air flies out. And then you go to try to freeze something as part of our water quality monitoring stuff. We actually freeze and thaw these samples for microcystin. It takes forever. I mean, we're spending hours waiting for a little vial of a milliliter in a little glass vial to freeze, and a cooler machine that held the temperature, say, at -20 degrees centigrade, that would be significant. So we'd be buying ourselves some time there.
I should point out, putting my lawyer hat on for a minute, that this isn't a memorandum of understanding. This is a lease. I mean, it refers it to itself as an agreement. It's just a binding agreement. It's kind of good to understand that if we're going to sign it. Mm-hmm. Memorandum of understanding usually says these are the terms that the parties are contemplating inserting into a formal lease. This is just flat out agreement or lease for, and there's no, there's no breaking it. We're on the hook for 12 months with no opportunity to cancel it, and then there's an option to renew it for another 12 months. Apparently, unless canceled by either party. So apparently it's really a 2-year lease, but the way I read this, during the second year you can cancel it with 60 days notice, which is all fine. Just want everybody to understand what we're signing here. Actually, and too, if we got more formal and made a more formal lease out of it, that usually ends up inuring to the benefit of the landlord and not the tenant. So, I'm okay with it in this form. I'm just saying, let's just understand what we're signing here. I think the business about it is a 12-month lease with the opportunity for a 12-month extension. And I think what's contemplated here is that the second 12 months can be canceled on 60 days' notice. It's not written very well, but I think that's what's... And it's all fine. I'm just pointing out what I think it means. I think basically that the opportunity to relocate to this facility is a great thing. I don't have any problems with the substance of the terms, but it is a lease, and it's pretty much a lease, and it may be to our benefit that it's a lease to, it is a lease for a full year, and, there's an option for a second year, but it's kind of meaningless because either party could cancel it on 60 days' notice. So it's not like either party has the right to extend the lease for a year, and the other party can't object to that. But, the cost savings are, I think we get improved space for less money. And I think that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the lease and to authorize, I guess my name's on the signature line, so to authorize me to sign it on behalf of the Devils Lake Water Improvement District.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Is there not enough time to move this to next month? Outside that scope? Too tight? Brian brought up about the lease terms, if they would. Looks to me like if they could just rewrite it, make it a little more clear. I don't know if it's that important or not, but.
Well, the way I read it is like, okay, if you sign this effective January 1st, come basically Halloween, if you want out, you just tell them 60 days notice that you're not going to renew after December 31st.
That's how I read it.
Yeah. So, that's, and then after, say, December 31st, you've got, this other year.
Do we get to renew it at current terms?
They didn't say, when they say renew, that means renew on the exactly the same terms. There's no opportunity or authorization to change the terms. There's no cost of living increase. There's no.
So we're totally free to make, if we wish to make this a one-year lease, if we opt out October 31st and,
Yes.
or go for a second year if we like it for the same deal.
Yeah.
So, Brian, you're not concerned at all about any ability to break the lease being built in or modified?
Well, it just has to cut both ways. The provision that you could put in here is that either party can terminate the lease on 60 days' notice or 30 days' notice or 90 days' notice to the other party. I'm not sure that that's particularly to our benefit to do that.
What about, I guess things that would concern me would be as the college gets a little busier and using the equipment, what if we need 10 days in the lab instead of 6, and they go, no, sorry.
And
that would be, because it's a hard number. We got a hard number in here, right?
Yeah. Well, I've had, good discussions with the president and interim president on this as well. And, I don't think that that it's foreseeable, whatever, that those conflicts can't be absorbed by having that other space be that other store area. Basically, and it's the highest and best use of this college is for college instruction, and that's kind of what they're there for to do. And that's actually part of this agreement. It's like, we're understanding that, and that we but because there's this other back entrance basically to do the lab work that we need to do, we can get it done even though there might be a class in there.
Okay.
Is the way I understand. That's what I put forward to him as my understanding and capacity, and heard nothing to suggest otherwise, so that couldn't be done too. But
and for for accounting and budgeting reasons, and this may need to be a 12-month lease so that they can, in accounting terms, project the income for the year. Whereas if it's cancelable on 30 days' notice, then it's not definite enough to, in accounting terms, to count it. It might be a lot more important to them than it is to us, and I
don't know.
And I also think that it might take 10 months to work out some of those things like you're talking about. We might have problems, and we may need to go to them and say, hey, we need to work something out here.
And I honestly feel like we've got a partner right there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this is going to be like this weight on our necks. How do we deal with this lease that honestly, I think that if you decided that in June, after 6 months, that you really wanted that wall taken out, and that happened, and you were set, and I just feel like you've got a partner right there to do it, and at the same time, I feel like honestly, if you really went to them in June and said, this isn't working out for us, even if we did put that wall in, or take out that wall. Honestly, I can't speak for them, but I can't see that they wouldn't allow you to, because I think they're just a good partner.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, the way this reads is if we say we want the door installed, then we just have the absolute right to have it installed at our expense.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we have the right, but not the obligation to install the door after June 30th. All they have to do is what they have to do is give us an estimate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could refuse the estimate and not do it, or take it and do it.
Yep.
So anyway, we already made a motion, didn't we?
We did, or you did.
It was seconded, and we
By me.
discussed it.
It's
We
time.
want to discuss it further.
No.
Yes, there was an issue that Bruce came up with about storage.
I was going to take that as a surplus new business, but
Oh, okay. Well, then let's go ahead and,
we can, go ahead.
well, I'm not clear on what it was he was going to speak with you, I think. I just happened to be in his shop. Something about leaving goods or something like that for storage purposes?
So I actually talked to Bruce this evening.
It's been a while since I did.
So Bruce has offered to let us continue to use the space as a storage location for $25 a month. And that does a couple of things. One, it kind of will lessen the amount of stuff that we have to take over. It looks like we got a big surplus list that we need to go through here to get rid of some stuff. And it also provides him a little bit of time to adjust back to the property tax changes that he did for the district. So he'd offered up that we could use it for that minimal amount while he's showing it and trying to, and then, as long as we'd be willing to move out within 2 weeks, not long-term storage forever, but if he gets a renter the 1st of January, then he would give us a couple of weeks to get out of there. But, at $25 a month, he can't get storage space heated with electricity for that, so I would like to take that up after we get done with this, if we do decide to move forward with it.
So what we could do is, it would just give us more time to deal with the surplus issues, basically.
Mm-hmm. And it'd be month to month.
It's like yeah, I would guess then, so I haven't seen that lease, but we're going to have to give him, 30 days notice?
Yeah, we have a 30-day notice
Okay.
provision.
Well, let's ask him at the same time to give us a little, something we can sign, saying $25 a month for storage, terminable on 15 days' notice. That's what he wants?
Yeah, I mean, that would be easy to do. Appreciate that offer. Certainly valuable.
Yeah, it's very kind of Bruce. I mean, that's obviously $5 a month is pretty close to zero.
He's a good supporter of the community.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And then the next item is surplus property issue, right?
Yeah, so given, moving out of the existing area that we're at and into a furnished environment, frankly, I mean, there's going to be a lot of surplus of desktop or desks and shelving and just a number of other things. I've listed here, I took our inventory. Many years ago, I created this inventory from what the district had, and I try to update it every year. It's pretty close, I think. I really try to get it updated pretty regularly with new stuff that we might have bought. And a lot of this is, like I said, furnishings, and so those would be surplus. There's some other stuff in here that is just of no value, frankly, to the district. We're not going to use a film camera anytime in the near future that I can foresee. We're not going to use an overhead projector. We haven't since I've been here, and they were here before I came. So there's other things that would be, the district would be, finding surplus to itself.
You don't have need for insulated boots, 6 pair, that sort of thing?
We got these. They're a stack of boots that I think the fire department gifted to the district years ago, and we've used them like once. So there's just some, we've got this other outdoors, or it's the exterior storage facility that is my estimation that will bring some of the stuff that's actually in the office right now, like some of these, some tables that we'll want to keep, portable tables that we could store in there. And so there's some stuff in that site that I think we could benefit by cleaning up too, and that would have been one of them.
Well, I just looked at this and read the things you have here, and there's a lot of things like the Pentex camera. I can see where you'll never have a need for that again. Mm-hmm. But, in my younger days, I had an apartment once that was not furnished, and I bought a bunch of junk put in there. And then I went to an apartment that was furnished, and I didn't sell everything. I took it back to my mother and father's place. And then I found my own place that I had to furnish, and I went and got it. What happens if this doesn't work out long term, or what happens if cafe is realized?
Yeah.
Do you need all these things, or much of these things, or not?
Most of them not. I think that bookcases could come in handy again. The desks that we're talking about are really pretty low value, and the cost-benefit analysis associated with the cost of storage becomes pretty much in the favor of just getting rid of stuff, in my estimation. I went through a similar thing when I finished my undergrad, and before I moved to England for a couple of years. I actually stored everything in Vermont for like 6 months, and paid the storage, and then I sold it all because it really was surplus to me, and I should have just got rid of it at the time. That was kind of a lesson that I learned, and it was kind of the reverse. But when I look at like like the desk that I use, we paid $80 for it in 2005. It's probably served its purpose. The desk that Seth's used is, frankly, you could probably get another one for $40 somewhere. I mean, they're really not. There's only really one piece of furnishing in there that we have that actually has. There's a nice credenza, that middle item that's in the middle of the office, that actually has some value. I think beyond $20. Frankly.
Paul, is there a legal process that we're supposed to go through to dispose of government property?
Yeah, and this would be part of it. It would be declaring it surplus, having an evaluation of the materials, and then declaring it surplus.
Then after that's accomplished, how do you actually unload it?
Well, that could be directed to me to do, and then I would find the ways to do it. And what I would suggest is that, what I would likely do would be put a tag on everything, invite the public to come see it and buy it. If they don't want to buy it, then we'll find another way of sustainably moving it, which would be like, a Goodwill donation or something like that, in my estimation. Okay. Frankly, a lot of the stuff that we have, again, it kind of goes at the point, like, okay, we might have paid $80 for this desk new, and you could probably get another one for new for $80. In fact, you certainly couldn't sell it for more than 10, I wouldn't think. And so, over time, storage becomes just kind of not a very practical thing. I mean, you might break even. And then the other thing about actually getting rid of it, frankly, I don't find that it would be too good a use of staff time to be spending a lot of time trying to market this stuff. Come to our new sale and, and eBay. And that's going to burn. You're going to spend money trying to make $5, and you're going to lose money.
So basically we end up with once we move out and we have this stuff left over there, we can do a little garage sale kind of thing, surplus sale, midweek for a couple of days in January or whatever.
Yeah, even in December. If you're going to move, you might as well get stuff cleared out.
I was just thinking if we moved out and had the stuff that we're surplusing, and then
yeah, absolutely.
Then we don't have to worry about somebody grabbing the wrong thing or wanting something we don't want to get rid of. So.
Yeah, I think you'd exhaust your value of that inventory in 2 months of Bruce rent. I mean, $50 is probably what it's all worth.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do I need to make a motion to declare a surplus list?
Yes, you do.
I will make a motion that we declare a surplus list with the 150, or is it 50 items, as defined by Paul?
Those are inventory item numbers, so that I can go through the inventory list and then scratch them off as becoming surplus. So those aren't. It's not 150.
Oh, okay.
Total.
So I'll make a motion. I'll withdraw my original there and say I'll make a motion that we declare surplus list based on the surplus property description table in the staff report for November.
And then I actually added into here in the text the idea potentially of just allowing me a little, if in fact I find that, we do want to keep one pair of boots, or there's a seventh pair or something. If you, knowing that I've provided this to you, if there's some other stuff that seems reasonable that, I see, oh yeah, we definitely don't need that, or actually we should keep that. If you feel comfortable with that, I would ask that you provide me that leniency.
No, I'll make a motion that Paul can declare anything and everything he wants of physical property of the district, including himself, to be surplus.
Okay.
No. Why don't we just say you have the ability to, we'll declare a surplus list, and if you have to add or modify something in December, you can.
That's true.
That to us.
Yeah. It was my thinking that we'd be done with this, but you're right.
And if you have things to add or things that you want to take away from it, go for it.
Okay. Is this a situation where you have to account for everything that's sold?
Yeah, I think you want to account for where things. Frankly, our level of inventory is pretty high, and the stuff that you have as a fixed inventory asset. Nothing actually on here qualifies for any of these assets to be tracked. I did this years ago because I thought it was something we should have. We should have an inventory, and, that way we can keep on top of it. If we're all of a sudden losing staplers, at least we knew we had two, and we should have had two, that kind of.
Okay.
So that's the kind of level of detail that we went to originally, and haven't had to do much of that because we haven't bought much new, just like actually, like the computer for stuff. That is a capital one, but most of the stuff is not capital improvement level
So
stuff.
do you have to
Time out for a second, okay? I'll second the motion. Okay, now let's have some discussion.
Okay. Sorry. So, do you have to post this like a public notice kind of thing, or?
It's posted. It's here. This is declared surplus. You've had a public meeting on this. This stuff is available to the public. Public is notified of the surplus.
Okay.
I apologize, I didn't realize that was an actual motion. But I
Well,
got
let
a
me,
little lazy at the end.
I'd like to make a slightly different motion, that we authorize Paul to declare this list surplus property, and that he follow the legal process for disposing of surplus property, and whether or not that legal process requires an accounting of the disposition of the assets, that he provide one at such time as the assets are substantially disposed of.
I second, William, go ahead.
I'll second it. That's a lot to be said. Yeah, that's fine.
Further discussion?
My only one is I'll withdraw my motion because we should have done that. It's okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we've got it clear that you're following some process and going to provide us an accounting at the end of the process. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Any non-agenda items? Any additional comments from citizens present on non-agenda items? Surprising. Board comments and announcements.
I guess my only, next month, are you going to give us a rundown on NOMS and?
Yeah, my intention was to try to get some,
That was kind of tight this time.
Yeah, it was kind of tight. We had the NOMS, the OLA, we had the audit. That was kind of last month. There's a lot of work went into all that stuff. The audit's not completely done. We still have feedback to provide, but that was part of last month. Do you want to give a verbal on what your take was? It? The fresher the better. I don't know what else.
I went to the OLA. Went to the OLA conference for a couple of afternoon sessions. It was really quite interesting in terms of understanding some of the different variables that go into the organisms that make up the HABs family, I guess you might say. They kind of presented a graph of, and I think Paul took some notes on this one, a graph of how at different times of the year you actually have different portions of these kind of different organisms have a cycle based on, I guess, the different conditions, where one will, you have your glowotrichia that'll come up early in the spring, and it's does better with a little cooler water or whatever, and then it ramps up through the different types, like from like glowotrichia to the anabina and stuff, and it really represented what we've been seeing in these last 2 summers in terms of when you have a full summer of good sunlight and great conditions for these things to come up. So I thought that was kind of interesting because some years we only see the glowotrichia and some years we don't. And, just looking at where those conditions lie and what we see that comes up as a dominant organism in the lake at different times of the. It's really kind of interesting to see how that was tracked to what scientists are seeing and dealing with. So that was kind of interesting. I know Paul tried to get me to buy a probe for $3,000 or something, but I told him I wouldn't. So, but other than that, I think it was a good conference. I think it was. I got to see Dr. Bennington. She said to say hello to everybody. I guess she's out in Bend now, enjoying herself in Eastern Oregon. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I too thought it was a very valuable conference. For me, it was, the additional takeaway of a serious level of marketing or networking, I'm going to say, of the district, with other entities, particularly with the Washington folks, because it was this joint conference. And, the work that I put in relative to the organization of the conference, and then I think really actually paid off because the networks were significantly more than if you're just one of the attendees. So that was kind of an unforeseen kind of benefit, I felt, for myself, for connecting with these other scientists from the neighboring state, which face the same issues that we do, and being in communication with them and being on a first name basis with them is an important thing. And so, but the downside to that is through some of the organizational time that I spent during the conference, I wasn't attending as many of the actual sessions. I think there was a balance struck there, though. Certainly, I mean, I feel like the other benefit was certainly heavily weighed out. I met with, spent a good time with one of the vendors there that has the software for the mapping, the aquatic mapping, and that was one of the sponsors. And so I actually got some, firsthand time with them, and actually again down in San Diego too, because they came down to that as well. And so that was, the vendors' connections are also very important. I found, I've told the story about the monitoring the Abraxas stuff that we use for microcystis. Well, that came out of a NOMS event originally. I'm happy to report that we actually solicited some sampling stuff for the OLA conference from Abraxas. They happily donated that. Somebody picked that up at a very cut rate. They also provided something down in San Diego at the NOMS conference, because they actually had a full booth there. And this product, in fact, was the exact stuff that we use. And so I bought it. And it was at, I think we spent $110, $120 for a $480 item. And I did that basically twice, because those are those microcystin kits, the strip tests, that we use 2 sets of this summer, and that's what we're going towards next summer. So I felt very reasonably empowered to do that on your behalf, because basically saved $600. Yeah, and in fact that almost paid for another half your conference fees. So that was pretty exciting. That's not normally the case. I don't estimate that's going to be your finance tool for the future, but it happened this time. And what David was alluding to was one of the auction items that had at the OLA conference was a $7,200 piece of equipment that went for $3,700 in an oral auction. And Tetra Tech was happily bought that for $3,700, and they paid half the rent.
It could have been yours.
Yeah, David. I told David, I don't feel like I can bid on that, but you can, and we could probably buy it from you. But
my reasoning was I did not want to buy it and then come to the district saying, "Okay, I'm going to abstain myself from this motion if you want to do this." And if you guys decide not to, I didn't want to have to sell it on eBay, so it went to a good group of folks that'll actually use it. So,
So those are some kind of interesting things that happen that are go on at conferences that are kind of exterior to just fundamental stuff. But we can in December we can provide a full kind of some additional feedback if that's desired relative to both conferences or the North American Lake Management Society meeting, is pretty intensive, and that review actually of my time sitting down is probably time well spent again too, just reviewing my own notes on what was blasted at me, for 3 days straight. So, but that being said, it's also just it is your staff time that gets used, and then your meeting time that would get used, and so that, I guess I'd leave it to you to decide whether or not you want me to come back in December with that.
I think it'd be nice to have a little bit of a overview of some of the highlights. And and if you want to do it in an email, not, or publish a document, that's fine. It doesn't have to be staff report and meeting time. I'm happy to read whatever. Okay. If you have any questions, we can always discuss it.
Yeah, I'm interested. Was there any discussion of invasive weeds or weed control and or the use of grass carp for vegetation control? Anything along those lines?
I can confidently say there wasn't any grass carp discussions at the NOMS conference, because I'm pretty sure I would have red flagged that and caught that. And so I don't recall that in particular. The vegetation management as a whole, I believe I went to a couple things that would fall into that, and I'll refresh my memory as to what that was and look at that and bring that forward. Those would be some of the main things that I would have been targeting to be in attendance of. Right off the top of my head, I don't recall.
Yeah, no, just give us a little report on. It'd be interesting to see what other people have to say, what their experiences are. I mean, to the extent that was revealed at the NOMS conference.
Right. Yeah.
I had a question for you, Paul, on a different. There was an article in the Oregonian a couple weeks back about the State of Oregon HAPS program, and it talked about the funding being provided by the CDC, and that funding ended September 30th or October 1st. And but it talked about, it sounded like the website would stay up, and if lake managers wanted to post stuff or send stuff to them, they'd post it. So I was kind of unclear the way the article was written, is if it was going to continue, but it sounded like the outreach, the brochures, they wouldn't have the money for that. Is it in fact going to continue on next summer?
Yes. Yes and yes on the brochure aspect, the educational stuff, that's going to go away, like you're suggesting. The state actually has provided like a matrix of things that they are doing, or as of September 30th had been doing, and stuff that they would continue to do, and that breakout. And I do have a copy of that. I could probably send it to you. But basically the crux of it is, okay, all of the kind of fundamental work of creating a program has been done. They're not going to extend any more time into creating additional guidance on sampling or at what level something might be considered toxic, their thresholds. They aren't going to do any more signage. They're not going to hold any symposium kind of thing that they had done in the past. In fact, the Oregon Lake Association has been talking very extensively about how they, in which we are a member of, could help facilitate to at least have some of that ongoing symposium kind of information sharing, which everybody across the state has found a lot of value in having like at least an annual kickoff to the cyanobacteria season, if you will. So that may come to be through, say, OLA. But as far as listing advisories, they'll still maintain that data set and that website and do the listings, and then do the delistings as data comes to them. But the kind of the public relations side of the stuff will go away considerably.
Okay, so it's pretty accurate then.
Yeah, it sounds like it was, yeah. They've been planning for this kind of phasing down of this program, more phasing down. Should have said out because it does continue for quite a while, knowing that they had a 5-year grant and it was done.
All right, thanks.
Any further board comments or announcements?
Well, I'll just re-announce that I won't be here next meeting.
Okay. On that happy note, we are adjourned.
Florida, oldest son. He's in Miami Beach. We're going to Disney World. Wife would live there if she could, so we've gone to Disney World.